Hello and welcome to Read. Today I want to talk about Carpenter's Gothic by William Gaddis. This is his third novel. It came out 10 years after J.R. in 1985. And yeah, I'm slowly but surely and delightfully making my way through all of Gaddis's works. This book was a bit more of a commercial success than his others. Probably, as you can see, it is about a quarter the length of the recognitions. But for anyone who is a fan of Gaddis's early works, please don't take the size or the scope of the book as an indication that there's any compromising quality. Gaddis very deliberately seems to have used a smaller scope so that he could explore some fundamental ideas, all of which relate, or a lot of which relate in some way to the concept of Carpenter Gothic, which I will get to. The main ideas, so other than talking about the themes of Carpenter Gothic, the only other thing that I really want to focus on in this video is Gaddis's use of narration, which always, I've talked about it a lot in both my recognitions and JR video, but I really like how Gaddis approached narration in this. Coming from JR, he's very definitely chosen dialogue as his main method for progressing the story, and it gives a lot of forward motion to his work, but there are still moments of narration, and the style of narration kind of changes and adapts depending on who the camera is focused on. But he gives really the most sublime descriptions to our main character Liz. I'll just try and rapid fire the plot and the characters so that I can jump in and start reading some examples. But yeah, from here I'll also just say that there are going to be some spoilers. So the story is set in just a single Carpenter Gothic house. The setting never changes, and even though there are, I think I counted there's 90 characters in this book when I was just looking through the list on the Gaddis annotations, but really there's only about 6 or 7 core characters that are really important who come and go into this house. Our main character is Liz Booth. She is married to Paul Booth. Liz is an heiress to a mining company, along with her brother Billy, and some other people off screen who don't really matter. Paul is a Vietnam veteran, and in a very save the cat, kick the dog style, you're pretty much meant to hate this guy from the get-go. He starts off being rude and derogatory to Liz. When Billy comes over to have a conversation and just chat with Liz, they get into intellectually, Paul and Billy kind of clash, and that is something Gaddis sets up a lot, is taking basically two people who hold fundamental ideas, and even though they can talk and they can try to argue, because they're not willing to compromise on these sort of core beliefs, that they don't make any progress. But anyway, Billy notices that Liz has some bruises, and so obviously there's some domestic abuse going on, and so yeah, you're pretty much meant to hate Paul from the start all the way till the end. And even though it ebbs and flows, you never like him, but you start to realize that basically every character has some sort of rotten or disorder quality to it. And Cynthia Ozick, in her review, she described this book really well. Even though a lot of the themes that are present in Gaddis's earlier works come up in this book, quoting Cynthia Ozick, she said that the world of Carpenter's Gothic is a poisonous world with humanity dying of itself. And really our only sort of salvation is Liz, who is, she's 33 years old. When a main character is 33, what are the chances that they're going to make it to their 34th birthday? And that also kind of comes back and relates to the title. So really quick, before I move on and read some extracts from the book and or talk about the rest of the characters, we'll talk about Carpenter Gothic. So Carpenter Gothic is a style of architecture that tries to emulate the look of the old Gothic architecture of churches, cathedrals, etc., but not using stone, just using wood. And another very important thing is that the houses are designed from the outside in, so they're designed to look very nice, but when you go inside, you realize that, oh, they wanted to have a window here and here and here because it looks aesthetic, but the rooms don't really line up, so you get windows in really awkward places and so on. And Gaddis took this idea of, focusing so much on your external image, but like internal disorder, and really ran with it and used it as a symbol to basically just say, like, look at all of these people who hold these fundamentalist ideas and they're not willing to compromise. And then also Carpenter's Gothic is the title, not Carpenter, Jesus being a carpenter, and so on. I'll quickly talk about the rest of the characters. So this Carpenter Gothic house is not owned by Paul and Liz Booth. They are renting it. It is owned by Mr. McCandless, who is a bit of a mysterious older guy. He's got a locked room in the house. There is a lot of Gaddis runs with a lot of themes from Gothic Gothic novels. So we've got the mysterious locked room in the house. There is the affair between the older man and the younger woman, and there's a lot of descriptions of, like, trees that look like bodies and misty environments and so on, but all with a very particular Gaddis flavor, and it feels really like new and fresh. He owns the house, and the reason that he's important is that he has some information about a particular area in Africa where there may or may not be some gold that is able to be mined. And this is important because Liz is the heiress of a mining company, but also Paul is working as a media consultant for the Reverend Uda, who is a Southern Baptist evangelical preacher. He has a radio station in Africa. And just to give you an idea of how like bombastic this story is, there's like almost a literal Armageddon that happens in this story. In a botched baptism where the Reverend accidentally drowns somebody, where it drowns a young boy, the Reverend tries to convert that into a sign of prophecy to lead a crusade into Africa under the guise of, trying to spread and bring the good word to all of these people. But the Reverend is very likely also working with these people who want to know whether there is this gold there to mine. And Mr. McCandless is important because he has the information. He's constantly getting bribed by his opposite, who is Lester, who is like a missionary who we can sort of see eye to eye with. He did work with him, but Mr. McCandless is a geologist. He's talking about, and he really just goes to town. He is the Gaddis insert in this book, which is kind of funny because in like JR there are characters like Jack Gibbs, Thomas Eigen, and even Edward Bast, I guess, who are like parts of Gaddis, but not really all Gaddis. And it was funny that Gaddis said, McCandless is just me. But even that is not really, 100% true, because as the novel goes on, like, yes, Mr. McCandless it gives Gaddis the opportunity to just write like many page-long diatribes of things, of, talking about criticizing creationism, science, and so on, and general bigotry and religious idealism. The plot-wise, he goes on to just be discovered almost as a fraud. He didn't really do a lot of the things that he said he did. He was alluded to that he spent some time in a mental hospital, and so there is always like the classic Gaddis subtlety. I think that's pretty much it, without like spoiling any more plot things. I will talk about, I guess, I already talked about Liz Booth's unfortunate demise, so that's a pretty big plot spoiler. But anyway, those are a lot of the themes that Gaddis is working with within this novel, and he does so in a really, really like excellent, short, condensed period of time. I think I'll jump through and start talking about some of the parts of narration. So this book is in the third person, but it's like a close third person that almost always follows Liz in the Carpenter Gothic house, except for some parts where it's absolutely important for the plot for her to leave. So, and then at that part, that's when we're following Mr. McCandless, but it comes back to her pretty quickly. And what I love is that even in the sections where it focuses on her and in the very end of the book it sort of focuses on Paul, they never get any of these just absolutely beautiful moments of seeing the beauty in the everyday, because everybody else is so focused on talking and not just listening. They're so focused on progressing the plot, progressing their ideals. And Liz, she wants to she's a housewife, she's trying to do things, she's trying to learn a language. There's a funny section of her just speaking really botched French to a house cleaner. Liz will go through and look, and she'll read dictionaries. She wants to try and sort of learn words, but she's constantly being undermined by all of these other people, all these other men in her life. But just to give you an idea, here's a way in which Liz perceives the world, which just has so much beauty compared to any of the other shit that these guys are talking about. From the terrace where she came out minutes later, the sun still held the yellowing heights of the maple tree on a lower lawn's descent to a lattice fence threatening collapse under a summer exuberance of wild grape already gone a sodden yellow, brown spotted, green veined, full as hands, its leaves' lower reaches toward the fruitless torment of a wild cherry tree, limbs like the scabrous bark trunked itself, wrenched, twisted, dead, where one of them sported wens the size of a man's head, cysts the size of a fist, a graceless lacoon of a tree whose leaves where it showed them were shot through with bursts neither yellow nor not, whose branches were already careers for bittersweet, just paling yellow, for the Virginia creeper in a vermilion haste to be gone. And so, beautiful writing, and we do get some parts of narration, but whenever we're jumping to other people, a narration when we're focusing on these men, it's always so bare bones, and it's really deliberate. And I think that readers, you'll really love how Gaddis masterfully changes and adapts the narration. And this is a line that just gets straight into poetry. I love this so much. Lids closed against the streetlight's gleam, scattered on the wall, the empty mirror, it scarcely mattered, scattered. So great. The chase continued on what passed for sleep, taking with it what passed for time, till finally, eyes fallen wide again, crowded with movement, still as the breathing beside her, she came off the edge of the bed and brought the room and her own face back to ashen life down a grinding walk, bordered with laurels and terminating in a giant horse chestnut circled at the base by a seat leading down to the fence. And yeah, it's an idea that I believe Gaddis talked about when he was writing this book. I think he was separated from his second wife, and if I recall correctly, in some letters he was talking about the mundane moments of every day. And here's just an idea of Liz being able to see those mundane moments, but not being able to connect with or get Paul to see them. She turned from making pale tea with the leaves still wet in the strainer, staring out to the disconsolate garland high in the limbs of the mulberry tree, down the fence where the wild grape's few blemished leaves still clung to the tangle of curl and tendril, and the rest of them gone to earth in scraps so withered brown they'd no more claim left to identify than torn scraps of a grocery bag, on down where the Virginia creeper lingering flushed a deeper red and bittersweet paled yellow toward the sparse heights of the wild cherry, caught in the glance of morning sun in hesitating shades of yellow, even pinks, as though suddenly arrested in its inconspicuous departure, as though, and then goes on to do some more dialogue. And yeah, so I think that might be all that I want to talk about in this book. I don't know, I still can't decide if there's any alternate reading order for William Gaddis other than just reading all of his books in order, which is basically my plan. I found that this was a really beautiful addition to his body of work, and I can't wait to go on and read more. So thank you so much for watching. I really recommend you pick up a copy and read Carpenter's Gothic. And I'll see you all in the next video.